Dr. Walshauk, you've been through many conversations on this subject, I'm sure, over the years, and probably were very interested in what the Secretary had to say. What are your comments about creating jobs here in San Diego?
Well, I'd actually like to amplify a bit on his comments, because I think one of the things that he didn't say as much about that we need to come to terms with is the whole new paradigm of work and of growth and of economic value. Building economic value has changed in the 21st century, and a lot of us are still captive of 20th century models and 20th century strategies. The nature of innovation is very different today than it was when I was a girl, when you had Xerox PARC and IBM and all these extraordinary companies that were innovating. Today, it's West Institutes, and it's the kind of programs you're involved with that are the hubs of innovation. They're small, they're nimble, they're network systems. The nature of production and the alliances, the vertically integrated company, which we all grew up with. I did research on General Motors back in the 1970s. They owned Firestone Tire, they owned Dell, they owned credit companies, they did all their own tooling. And recently in Michigan, I was doing interviews of supplier networks, and a man said to me, "You have to understand, Dr. Walshauk, for 3 generations, we never had to make a long distance call to get a customer." Because General Motors and Delphi were our customers. No longer true. So even the skilled laborer, the service provider, the entrepreneur who's putting together an office cleanings company is having to look at customers and technology and his strategies very, very differently. The organization of work is just different. So it seems to me that this has some profound implications for education, training, and especially the workforce development system, our hosts today at this wonderful session. If in fact innovation, entrepreneurship, small businesses, home-based businesses, freelance workers, contract research, contract manufacturing, if these are going to be the industries of the future, how are we in our education and training systems preparing people to work and to be adaptable? And this is where I think the points about education and training are so important. And I actually have 5 ideas with this regard, particularly as it relates to the workforce partnership and this long history of America really paying attention to the need to raise the skill levels of the poor and the underserved, which we must reaffirm and continue to do, as well as support the needs of dislocated workers. But there are 3 other kinds of workforce development needs that I feel we have as a nation and are implied in the remarks that Robert Reich made. And one of them is we have a lot of vulnerable industries. I mean, I've been doing work in Michigan for 4 years. There were small supplier companies, multi-generational companies, that had 500 and 600 employees who today have 100 employees, in part because they were too slow to retool, to recognize market changes, and to adapt to the new realities. And I think that this phenomenon of companies at risk is spread across the nation. And so we've got to assure the retention of some of the core industries we currently have that are paying high wage jobs, and the workers in those industries who are at risk, which means in your world an expansion of incumbent worker training. Incumbent worker training in the old days was seen as, oh, we're just helping employers who are making profits do better. No, 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 no. Incumbent worker training keeps talented and skilled workers employed and keeps America competitive. 2 other areas where I feel education and training, and particularly lifelong learning, which is the business that I'm in, need to be focused, is in supporting the new forms of work that are emerging in this age of globalization and automation. You go to a workforce partnership board, and it's San Diego Gas and Electric, it's the hotel industry, it's Sharp Healthcare. But in fact, lots of people are working in home-based businesses. Lots of people are entrepreneurs, starting small businesses. They're starting landscape services businesses. They're also starting software businesses. Those voices aren't at the table. But 90% of our new jobs in this region and in this country come from those startup, high-growth companies. We need to be asking, what are the kinds of education and training support that they need? And finally, there's this whole area of being ready for the future. I love your remarks about green jobs. Because again, if I can quote research I've been doing around the country, those of you who followed what's happened with the $700 billion in investment in renewable energy money know, a research was done on this at Georgetown University, 75% of that money went into contracts to offshore manufacturers, suppliers, and employers, not to the United States. Because we do not have the companies, the suppliers, and the workers who can build the propellers for windmill machines, who can do a lot of the machining and precision manufacturing that Dr. Reich talked about. We have to have an education and training system that is getting people ready for the next job, the next technology, the next opportunity, and we don't have that. So I sort of conclude, George, with the fact that we really need a kind of new ethic about work. And I think Peter Drucker said it 40 years ago, all work is learning. You never stop learning. And every employer in this country, we invest 1 or 2% of our company revenues in education and training. In Sweden and Germany, it's 5 to 7%. In France, you get tax benefits if you train your workers, not just if you invest in new technologies, but you invest in the development of your people. So we need an ethic of lifelong learning, but I also think we need more data about how globalization, automation, and regulation are affecting workforce horizons, and more forums that harness the input of people like us in this panel in the decisions about where we're going to make investments in education and training. I'd like to just sort of conclude, we're in the Qualcomm building. Qualcomm for me is an icon of a company that does it right. It's an employer that invests hugely in its workforce at all levels, and it, as well as investing in the community. We also have a workforce partnership group that is so progressive compared to the rest of the country. Nonetheless, they are hampered and inhibited by state and federal guidelines that make it very difficult to have this kind of progressive, inclusive strategy that I think we need for the 21st century.
Thank you, Mary. That was wonderful.
We hope that the video that you've just watched and the dialogue created at our 2010 Workforce Summit is one that we will continue to focus on throughout the coming year and in the years ahead. If you or your organization is interested in learning more about the San Diego Workforce Partnership and the work that we do, or learning more about the 2010 Workforce Summit and the dialogue created there, please contact our organization at the information provided on the screen. On behalf of the San Diego Workforce Partnership, thank you for your interest and thank you for your support.